Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I think we're good to start. اللهم اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا لي قولي. It's been a tough year for everyone. I'm speaking for myself first, but I know I've spoken to many in the mosque and many in general in our community, and it's been a tough year. And I kind of wanted to start by sharing like how I decided to do these series, but I will share that what Brother Shafni said today about like all the things I'm going to discuss, they're not going to be all today because it's impossible to cover it all today. So mainly today we're just going to set the foundation about what's going to happen, what you can expect, a little bit about myself. I'm going to keep it short, I promise, and then after that you can ask me any questions. If the sisters have any questions, they're more than welcome to share them as well. Do they have a mic over there?
Yeah, they are.
Okay, perfect.
Give me 1 second. I want to just increase.
Yeah.
Can you just say something? Just talk.
Can you guys hear me? I don't mind holding it, it's fine.
Hold on.
Can you guys hear me? It's good? I can hold it, trust me, it's fine. Yeah, okay, perfect. So, I'll mainly share a little bit about myself, what to expect in these series, and we'll leave it open for some questions towards the end. I like the questions because they help people think, and they also help me understand. Thank you, Jazakallah. Help me understand how to best, do my best to share and serve the community better. This year, and I'm talking personal experience, this year personally for me has been pretty difficult from the beginning, very tough with a lot of personal issues and family issues happening. And so, just to keep it short, I decided to go to Mecca, and I was lucky, alhamdulillah, to go in a month ago. And made a lot of dua there and prayed that this year goes smoothly. And the next day I leave from Mecca, the war happens in Palestine. So all of a sudden it gets thrown into your face. And so I kind of started falling into a bit of a depression because of what's happening and what I've been witnessing online. I've also lost some colleagues. I have a lot of colleagues in the community who are non-Muslim. A lot of them, they have very different views than myself. And so I've lost some people along the way. And all of this played a role into just kind of pushing me down. And at some point, not too far along, like 3 weeks ago or so, like a week into it or 10 days into it, I started realizing that whoever it is you want to label as the enemies of our community, and we all know that Islam and Muslims in general have enemies all over the world, people that don't like them, don't like the community, there is nothing they want more or they would benefit more than us being depressed, unproductive, lonely, unhealthy, all these components that basically render us useless in our communities. Like we're just existing to be there for our families and to work and that's it. And we're not really actually reaching our maximum full potential. And then I realized after that the biggest enemy actually is myself, is that we actually are our own biggest enemies because we're the ones who hold ourselves back and we're the ones who don't view everything from a large perspective as Allah is testing us for a reason, and what's happening right now is a test, and it's really up to us to see the wisdom in all of this. And nothing makes sense more than it starts with ourselves, with our own self. Like how can we personally do better? And that's why I'm largely here, is because I want to personally do better as well. And a big part of doing better is making sure that I serve the community that I love the most, the ones that share my values with me as well, the Muslim community. And in the process, both of us, both you guys and myself, can learn and do better and rise as a community. And hopefully Muslims everywhere start doing this as well. What's happening really is an invitation to start to look inwards and do your best inwards, starting by yourself, and then by extension your families, and by extension your communities, and so on. And so I want you to take a moment to just reflect a little bit on why you might be here today. Like if there is anything that you might be personally struggling with, If there's anything that, and don't worry, I'm not going to be we're not going to be putting anybody on the spot at all. This is very general, but if there's anything that you might be personally struggling with, or something that you want to overcome, an area in life that you want to do better in, whether it's your health or your family or your careers, etc., reflect on that and consider maybe how this is tied to what we were discussing. And I will share the parameters of what we're going to go into eventually. Reflect on how it could be tied to it, and use that as a motivation to attend these sessions, which are going to be completely free. We're going to be holding them on Tuesdays after Isha, inshallah. A little bit about myself. I'm a registered dietitian. If you guys don't know the difference between nutritionist, registered dietitian is basically a protected title. So I work specifically, I specialize in disordered eating, so I work with eating disorders. Anybody familiar with eating disorders? Yeah, so there's many different types of eating disorders. The main one I specialize in is the eating too much. It's like overeating, binge eating disorder, which is quite common in the Muslim community, actually. For one reason, it's because many Muslims, they don't drink, they don't party, they don't do drugs. So once the one thing that's left to do is to eat. And so we love to eat, and food is great, but there's a point where it starts to affect us. And so that's what I specialize in. But working with a lot of the clients that I've worked with have actually been non-Muslim, and many of them struggle with other addictions. And that's when I started learning in other fields, in psychology, various fields, and learning in life coaching and other areas to tie it all together, because I realized that I can also help them in these areas. And alhamdulillah, I am able to help them, the ones that are willing to put in the work at least. And the one thing that's always left for them is the spiritual component, and that's obviously a struggle, right? Like sometimes some people are interested in it, but that's the one thing that's left for them to be aligned in with the spirituality component, because many of them are non-Muslim, so that they are able to actually achieve that inner peace. We have the opposite problem. Alhamdulillah, we're aligned spiritually for the most part, or we are trying to. We're on the truth, we're on the path that is truthful. However, a lot of us have kind of lost touch with the components that are outside the spiritual component, and that's what we're going to be talking about more, which are all things that our Prophet ﷺ paid attention to and lived by as well, and we're going to be tying that as well to him. So that's just a little bit about me. That's the work that I do, and I promise I will not be holding back in terms of information, but I will challenge you to some extent to consider the right approach for yourself, and to answer your questions based on what's more likely to actually make you look deeper and make a significant positive change, as opposed to give you a solution, like a temporary solution. Basically what that means is, if you ask me for a diet, I'm going to potentially ask you, like, why would you want to do it? What's motivating you to do it? And allow you to dig deeper a little bit, so that we're not just offering band-aid solutions over here. These discussions are meant to be deep, and they're meant to be challenging and uncomfortable. But like I said, we're not going to be putting the spotlight on anybody over here. However, you will find that me in general, I have no boundaries in terms of what I talk about, so I'll be talking about everything, right? So inshallah, and you be patient with me, but I am doing my best so I can help you guys, and also help myself in the process, inshallah. What to expect? I'm going to share a little bit from backwards as to the outcomes that we're seeking. Okay, so I'm going to share an outcome that we're seeking, and work backwards to show you how we're going to incorporate all these elements in our conversations. What is the best thing that all prophets were really well known for? Yeah. Say again? Truthfulness. Okay, so Abdurrahman says truthfulness. Okay, yes? What else? Worship. Hisham says worship. Yes? What else? Say again? Advice. Okay, advice. But your name is? Ibrahim. Brother Ibrahim says advice.
Patience and perseverance.
Okay, and your name?
My name is Liban.
Liban? Liban says patience and perseverance. Okay, all of these are, and how do they convey all of that to their communities and the people around them?
Leading by example.
And your name is?
Arslan.
Arslan? Leading by example? Yes, that's one. Abdurrahman? Say again? Giving advice. What we're looking at basically is, at the core of all of that, is communication and articulation. The Prophet ﷺ was an excellent communicator. He was excellent. He articulated everything so well. to the point that we study his hadith right now and we look at it and we try to analyze it from multiple perspectives. Of course, the best articulator in the entire of everything is Allah Azza wa Jal, right? That's the best articulator, because if we look at the Quran, it's all articulation, it's all communication. We analyze every verse and we can sometimes come up with it with multiple meanings and many wisdoms in it. And so one way we can benefit from all of that as Muslims who are on the truth is to actually be better communicators and better articulating what is within and how we want to what is it we want out of our life, connect it with our deen and our faith, and rise and do better as a community. Because for me, it doesn't make sense that Allah's chosen people who are in the truth, are not some of the best people in this world in what they do, in terms of career, relationships, physical health, mental health, everything. It doesn't make any sense to me, right? And that's why the community right now is actually, the Muslim community worldwide is, you kind of see it's almost like at a low point. I'm not going to say an all-time low because I haven't studied the history of Islam, but compared to certain times in the past where Muslims were scholars and they came up with brilliant inventions and they were excellent in their fields, we have kind of deviated a little bit from that. And a big part of it is to be excellent communicators and be able to articulate our own goals and what we want out of our life. And that extends also to our families. Being excellent communicators, articulate well with our families and our relationships. It's really important to raise good, healthy children. Another is to be able to sell ourselves in our communities and to be able to advance in our careers. You have to be a good communicator to have that as well. And so that's one of the best outcomes we can seek, is to model ourselves after the Prophet ﷺ and other prophets by being excellent communicators and be able to articulate what is within. Now moving on to how we can get to that. A component, and that's one thing we're going to be talking about, a component that can help us become better communicators is to have better self-control, okay? And also the Prophet ﷺ had excellent self-control. Everything he did for a specific reason. Now obviously we're not at that level that, and inshallah maybe we can be, but we're not at the level where everything that we do is in full self-control. But self-control is a component that allows us to have better communication, articulation, because we're in control of what we say and what we do in general. And self-control is best aligned with, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And if I say I'm not going to do something, I'm not going to do it. And that's a key component to be able to advance in life in general, is to have that strong self-control. Another component that ties into the self-control is the self-awareness. Okay? Self-awareness is also really crucial. If you're aware of yourself, and also the Prophet ﷺ was very aware of himself and people around him, actually his level of empathy was so high. There was many hadith that talk about how he was aware of people around him and how they felt when others were oblivious to how they felt, right? So he's very highly aware, but he cannot be aware of others around him if he's not aware of himself, of how he feels in general, of what's going on in his mind. And so self-awareness is another crucial component. And to be able to have a better opportunity at self-awareness, increased self-awareness, we have to have good mental health, right? We have to be mentally healthy. If we are doing things that is wrecking our mental health and we are depressed or feeling anxious all the time, it kind of masks our self-awareness and we don't really know what's going on internally. So it's almost like we're very jaded and we can't really see within. Think about, like, for example, if you wake up in the morning, I'm sure we've all been there, and we spend like 1-2 hours on the phone because we have nothing else to do, right? And then all of a sudden we have this brain fogginess going on. And so we're not really aware of, it's hard to use our mind when the brain is flooded. And that's another component that we struggle with big time right now, that specifically Muslims of today compared to the past. And it's not just Muslims, it's other people too, by the way. But it's also affecting our communities. Is the fact that there are so many different sources of distraction out there that affect our mental health and that fog our brains. From social media to the phone is the biggest component of it, to playing too many games, to watching things that are not good for us, to eating food that has never existed in the past that affects us in a negative way as well, that's not designed for our body to handle well. And these all play a role as well into our mental health. And then finally, the physical health provides a better environment for good mental health, because it's very difficult to have a maximum capacity at good mental health if physically we're not able to be at our best condition, because the body houses the mind, right? The brain. So if the brain is not functioning properly, your mind is not going to function at its maximum capacity. And so these are the 5 elements that we are going to be discussing. From it, there's going to be multiple topics that we come up with. Physical health, mental health, self-awareness, self-control, and ultimately good communication and articulation. And that's how we can do better. If we're able to tie all these things together and come up with certain topics so we can discuss as much as possible how to become better in these areas, that's how we can potentially do better personally and as a community and also as a family as well. And so from how it's going to go basically is every week I'll pick a topic unless you guys are asking questions or people come up to me and say, you know what, it would be really good if you talk about this or talk about that. And then I can prioritize these, but I have my list of priorities, the things that I'm going to be talking about and addressing that is problematic as much as possible. And these will be things like negative thoughts, right? So which all of us struggle with, depression, the different types of depression, anxiety, how to do, as we say, how to avoid certain, falling into certain addictions, how to come out of certain addictions, which is, by the way, it's not necessarily, and this is when, you know, some people will be like, oh, how can you say this and whatnot, but really, if you have an addiction or you have something you're struggling with, it's not a bad thing if you are trying to do better. It's only a bad thing if you are persisting in it and you are not trying to do better. But if you are trying, that's actually a form of jihad al-nafs, which is the only jihad that is actually required of all of us right now over here, okay? The people who are fighting the wars, it's a different type of jihad for them. For us, it's the jihad al-nafs, which is the highest form of jihad actually. It's very difficult to do better personally on a personal level. And so overcoming addictions, negative happens, is a form of jihad as well. And as we better and try to better ourselves, inshallah, it will be written in Mizan Hasanatna and in this life and the next one as well, inshallah. So this is what to expect basically. And just to tie it all together before I take some questions, it's just because I started by saying these are difficult times and they're probably going to get more difficult. And the only way to make them easier for ourselves is to actually find out what is Allah's hikmah in all of this for us. What is required from us individually, because I'm sure everybody here has struggled to think what is required from me during these times. Like I feel powerless, what am I supposed to do? So that is what is required from us, is the hikmah in all of this. And I'm going to leave you guys with something, and I want you to write it down, because if you're going to come next Tuesday, I'm going to ask about it. Okay? Surah Al-Baqarah, which is my favorite surah. Go to verse 129 and 151. Write it down. Abdurrahman, write that down for yourself, because I know you want to do it. 129 and 151. Okay? Write these verses down.
Add or two?
No, to 129. Sorry, 129. Read verse 129 and then read verse 151.
Not between them.
Not between them. Just this verse 129 and verse 151. And look at it, knowing that Allah chooses His words very, very specifically. Every letter in the Quran is chosen for a specific purpose. It is not random. And come and tell me next Tuesday what do you think? What did you come up with that? What does it mean? There's a lesson in that for all of us. And that's the challenge I'll leave with you guys today. There will be challenges every week that I will leave for you as much as possible, because it's an important part of what we do here is not just talk, because talking is amazing and it's great, but we have to turn it into action somehow. It's pointless if we're just learning, consuming knowledge, but not doing anything, right? And we're going to do it a bit slowly, at a slow pace. Be patient with yourself. Remember, when Islam came, it wasn't like stop drinking, do this, pray 5 times a day, stop everything. It was stages, right? Because it's not easy to make huge changes. So be patient with yourself and focus on little changes along the way. And inshallah, these sessions will make us all better, myself and you guys included. So I'll take questions right now, and Abdurrahman has the first question.
Is 129 and 151, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's not so much as a question, but a suggestion I want to make in regards to this.
Of course.
Because I know some brothers, some sisters would like to protect their anonymity, because some questions are quite sensitive.
Yep.
And what we could do is either me or someone else, we'll get envelopes. People write their question envelopes, and once enough letters are collected, we'll shuffle them. Because if it's only one envelope, we know who wrote it. So once we get enough letters, we'll shuffle them, and then we give them to you. You can read them because they're anonymous. Because you don't know how people's handwriting here. That's why it's anonymous. So like every couple of weeks, we have a stack of letters. Go through them.
That's an excellent point. So, brother saying that we should have an anonymous box for questions that we can bring here, because yes, some of these questions will be sensitive. There is no shame in asking any question of any nature whatsoever, as long as it is meant to help you do better. There is absolutely no shame, all right? So if there's something that you don't want to put yourself on the spot in because, potentially it is haram or not mustahab, and obviously if Allah gave you satr, then you should also use that satr, then no problems, write it in a piece of paper and put it over here, and I'll read it and tear it apart and throw it away. So that's a good point. We'll do that inshallah. And if there's no boxes, if there's no paper in the boxes, and it's like you're like, oh, I'm going to be the only question, then potentially what we can do is do an anonymous. I'll talk to Brother Hisham. Is we can do an anonymous question form online or something. Yeah, the form.
A piece of paper, give it to Abdul Rahman.
I bought a bunch of envelopes, but I only need one, so I'll give you the nice tag envelope.
The form is easy, because I can literally, we have forms that you can type on the spot and they will appear on my phone immediately over here. So I'll just, so we'll do the form one. It wouldn't be complicated, it would be easy. So the form would just be like, what's your question? That's it, anonymous, nothing else.
The verse you said is 129 and 156?
151.
151.
Yeah.
So just with scroll, phone and scrolling and stuff, because obviously it's not a very good thing. But sometimes it's something important comes up, you watch it, then you scroll and keep on going forever. So is there any tips to not, once you realize, or to help you realize you're doing it and then to get yourself out of it?
Okay, so the brother was asking if you are scrolling on your phone, like the mindless scrolling basically, and it's obviously not good for you. How do you get yourself out of it, right? How do you, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, because sometimes there is an important video, you watch it,
right,
and when you scroll, you just keep on going.
Right, so in general, I'm not a big fan of mindless scrolling, so here's the way to do it. It takes, these are the questions that will be a bit complex because everybody struggles for different reasons on why they're scrolling. So for example, I'm going to give you a little example. If your scrolling is tied to your way of coping with, let's say, anxiety. Every time you're anxious, you go on your phone. People do that, right? They're like, I'm anxious, so I'm going to go on my phone to avoid my anxiety. Or I'm having a lot of stress, so I'm going to go on my phone to relieve some stress. Or I'm having this negative thought, so I'm going to go on my phone so I can escape that negative thought. Or I'm supposed to be doing work, but I don't have a plan for the work that I'm going to do, so I'm going to go on my phone and scroll. So everybody has different reasons. I'm going to challenge you to just go deeper and deeper to find what the root cause is, right? Because the beauty of Islam and the Arabic language is how deep and rich it is. So use that as a mirror to what you're doing as well for yourself, knowing that your goal is to, if you said you're going to watch a video, then you watch the video and that's it. That's the self-control. It's like, I'm on my phone to commit a task, which is watch a video, and that's it. But if that video pulls you into 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes of mindless scrolling, then obviously you've lost control in that moment. And we're all guilty of this. So knowing why you're doing it is the key step. And so every time you feel like doing it, don't tell yourself you're not going to do it. Just stop and pause, take a deep breath and say, why am I doing this right now? Right? That's a simple step. That ties into the self-awareness, is it helps you be more aware. Now here's the thing. If you've been doing things that, and we're certainly going to talk about dopamine and the brain and how it pulls us into addictive habits. But if you've been doing things like eating a lot of junk food, right? I'm not saying you're doing it, I'm just saying in general. Eating a lot of junk food, playing some video games, doing a bunch of other stuff that increases the dopamine in your brain, then your level of control over the scrolling will be very weak because you're fighting your brain basically. So your brain is seeking more and more and more, and you're trying to be no. So see how complex it is? It's impossible for me to give you a straight answer to it because one has to look at the causes as to what's contributing to that. What are the factors that are making it easy for me? This is really important. What are the factors that are making it easy for me to engage in this habit? And these factors could be things that weaken your control. And what are the triggers that are causing me to actually engage in this habit as well? So factors that weaken you and triggers that prompt you to do it. Right? These are two things to start looking at. And trust me, it takes a while to break free from some habits. I wish I can tell you tomorrow you guys will be good, alhamdulillah, everybody's good. Obviously we all have habits we're trying to break away from, so it takes a while, but the process of breaking it in itself is a form of of worship and doing better, because it's a form of bettering yourself. And Islam in general as a faith is a way to better yourself, because it's putting yourself on the truth. And that involves in every element in your life. So don't discount putting putting time in this area as well. And a good way to do it as well is to always use a certain, make a dua for yourself before. Allah help me understand why I'm mindless scrolling a lot, why this is my number one problem, right? Something like that. But these are good ways to start, but you basically want to have really good self-awareness, so that the next question that you ask me next time is, okay, I scroll out of this is what makes me scroll, how do I overcome that, right? As opposed to like the habit itself directly. Does that make sense?
Question.
Yes.
What would you suggest the best way of you finding out what the root cause of you doing those things? Like, do you think like sitting down and contemplating, or I don't know?
Very good question. So the brother is asking, what is the best way to discover the root causes of what's causing you to do XYZ, right? One of the best things you can do is contemplation is an amazing thing to do, but a step further is to write down, is to actually journal down what is exactly contributing to that. Now here's the thing, we're all ignorant to what we don't know. So there might be factors that contribute to it, to what you're doing, that you're not sure of. And so that's part of the learning process. Now I'll be doing my best to inject knowledge as we go that will help you understand a bit more, like, what can make us physiologically, which is physiologically is like physically, our body, what are ways that, because you're talking about like things like social media, these are companies that have billions of dollars behind them, like they know how your brains work more than you and I do, right? And they play on it. So knowing how your own brain works is a step forward as well. So we'll bring these things into the discussions, but what you can personally do is you can have a journal and write down, like reflect a little bit. Okay, I did this, and this is what I did before, and this is what I didn't. And here's something I'll give you a little bit of tip. This is straight from my work. All right. Here's 6 questions to ask yourself before. And maybe we can. Maybe I can find a better way to like provide these for you, so you guys. But like if you actually know what, because it's for free. So if you guys are serious about it, you should be writing it down. Okay. So I'm not gonna make it any more easier, because I need you also to invest energy into this. Okay. So here are 6 questions to ask yourself before engaging any habit in general that you want to stop. Number 1. What is going on in your body right now? What are you feeling in general? Like, how are you feeling? Okay. And even if the answer is I don't know, that's a clue in itself, right? If you constantly don't know how you're feeling, that's a clue that maybe you have disconnect with your emotions, and so you have to understand what emotions are like, right? So that is the first question: is how are you feeling? Scan your body. Number 2 is scan your mind. What am I thinking right now? What's going on in my mind? All right, that's number 2. Number 3. What are things that I was doing before? What are other habits that I was engaging in before? What was I doing before? Because sometimes we do things and we chain habits together. So what was I doing before? Number 4, is there anything else that somebody did to me that is beyond my control that is making me want to do that? Right? Because maybe your wife is. I don't want to say anything to start anything, but like maybe your wife is like upset with you or something, right? And that's affecting you. So you're like, I'm just gonna go play video games, right? So it happens. It's avoidance. So what is something that somebody else is doing that is affecting your decision? And finally, what environment am I in right now? The environment sometimes gives a bit of a hint. And then the 6th question is pertaining actually to the first question, which is how you're feeling. Is you can break down your feelings, and this is a discussion we can have a different day, inshallah. Your feelings into emotions that you are experiencing and physical, and I know it's going to be like we might not have time to go into this today, and I'm sure inshallah we'll have a day to go into it, but separating emotions from physical sensations. Emotions are things like fear, sadness, anxiety, anger, shame, guilt. These are emotions. Physical sensations is maybe you're hungry, maybe you're tired, maybe you're aroused, right? Like these are all physical sensations. So things that come from your body versus emotions are things that come from your mind. So you can break this question into 2, and these are your 6 questions. You can journal on that to start to increase your self-awareness. Journaling is very, very, very powerful. Abdurrahman, you had a question?
Yeah. So kids, like,
Okay, so Abdurrahman is asking for kids that whose minds are developing, how can you install good habits and avoid bad habits? The first point is for you is to listen to your father, to everything that he says, okay, without questioning anything, and your mother, anything that he is telling you. You just listen. It's good for you to get an understanding of why he's asking you to do X, Y, and Z, but you don't need the understanding, because sometimes he will say things that you might not understand why he's saying it, but the lesson will come later on in life. And sure, that's great to learn the lesson later on, but you haven't done what he said, then you missed out on the benefit of it. Okay? So one way to do it is to listen to your parents, because nobody will care about you more, and nobody will be wanting you to have a better future as much as they want you to. And they can think ahead because they've also been there. So you can ask them, right, what am I doing right now that is not good for me that I can do better in? Right? Nobody knows what you're doing as much as they're doing. The other thing you can do for yourself, because you're a young man who's growing right now, is you can hold yourself accountable by always auditing what you're putting your time into. You know what the word audit means?
Like writing down.
Yeah, good. Auditing is reviewing, like what you're putting your time into, right? So I don't know why I asked that. You probably know English better than me. So, but anyways, so what are you putting your time into? If you find, for example, I'm putting 2 hours a day on my phone, right? Or I'm not saying that's what you're doing. Or I'm putting 1 hour a day in playing games. Or I'm putting 2 hours in watching TV. Then are these things really helping you advance in your deen and in your life as a young man, in your physical health, mental health, in what you want to learn in general? If the question is they're not nurturing or giving your body and mind and spiritual component, if they're not feeding it, then maybe it's worth cutting it out, right? So spending more time being aware of what you're putting time into and slowly removing the things that are useless. Knowing that it's okay to watch TV sometimes and have some fun, but there's always an amount that it becomes a bit too much, especially if you start having other goals in life, like, I need to learn more in this field, or I want to study this, I want to study that. And then spend time reading. Reading is beautiful, obviously, and the Quran is great, and I know that you read a lot of Quran, but also reading other books as well. So holding yourself accountable in these areas. Physical exercise is really important for young men too, learning how to do better in this area. And in general, just being aware of what is your time going towards. And that goes for everybody, by the way, not just for young men, but I mean for adults more than the young ones as well. Because as adults, we sometimes think that, okay, you know what, like, we're working, we have our families, so I'm gonna work, and then like the last 3 hours of the day, nobody talk to me, I'm gonna do my own thing. But it doesn't work. It's not actually putting you anywhere, not allowing you to do better physically, mentally, etc. And I have many friends who are like that. So doing that audit for yourself and knowing that the busier you are, the more valuable and scarce, the more scarce your time is, the more valuable your time is. You actually cannot afford. If you're working 8 hours a day and you have 3-4 kids that are taking 2-3 hours, and you have your prayers and you're trying to memorize Quran and you're trying to do all these things, then the 1-2 hours at the end of the night, it's very valuable. You can't afford to put it towards something that is not moving you towards these things. And that's what I'm saying. We live in a time that is filled with distractions. And it's really easy for us to fall into these distractions and spiral downwards. And that's the last thing that we want to do, because it takes away from us excelling in other areas in life. And there are other people, there are other communities out there that they're relentless in excelling in their careers and in their chosen fields. That's why they're very powerful. They're relentless in it, right? They work really hard, they sacrifice everything else, and the number one priority is to be successful in the chosen fields and to have a lot of power in it. And sure, we can say, oh, well, yeah, it's corrupt and whatnot, but at the end of the day, it's playing a role in what's happening in this world right now. And there's nothing wrong with having more power and having more in this life in general, because why not? If it's written for you, then Allah will provide it for you, but you have to take steps towards it. So that's the long answer version to your question. Yeah.
Going back to the question of people being distracted too much nowadays, most of the videos or information we get that's important, we get from social media, right?
Yeah.
In the process of acquiring that information, sometimes you end up being distracted. Do you have any way or any advice you can always give people to not,
Yeah, are you talking about current events?
not just that. For instance, like when you go on YouTube to watch, for instance, some YouTubers
Right.
videos,
Yeah.
sometimes you end up scrolling, watching
Yeah.
other things.
So do we have to wrap up after this question? Or?
Yeah, just, yeah.
Okay, so I'll answer this question, and inshallah we'll continue next week. So I kind of went over it a little bit.
Repeat the question.
Oh, sorry. Yes, the question is how do you control how much time you spend acquiring information online, especially when you get your news and you get the current events from social media nowadays, right? Especially like YouTube.
Basically, to rephrase, it's like, do you think we should look for other sources to acquire that information than just go on those platforms where it's easy to get distracted to?
That's a great question. Yes. So is it better to go on to find other sources as opposed to go on social media platforms? If your level of control is low, and that, by the way, is something that is not fixed for everybody, it changes depending on what you're doing. So everybody is different there. Sometimes I have great self-control, sometimes I don't. It depends on what I'm doing, and we'll talk more about that. But if you sense that your level of self-control is low, and that's when you can ask yourself questions to be more aware, like, am I actually going to go watch this khutbah and that's it? Or am I more likely to lie on the couch and sit and just scroll and watch useless videos and information that doesn't get me anywhere? If the answer is yes, then potentially find another source. But in general, here's the thing, like there's too much information we're consuming nowadays, way too much. Like there's so many things we do not need to know, and our brain doesn't even have the capacity to process all of that because it's way too much. Never in time has a human brain been able to absorb so much information as we give it today. And no wonder then we're exhausted the next day, we don't sleep well, etc. Because it's too much information. Can you imagine back in the days then, like how people were when a war was happening in a neighboring country? They weren't getting a play-by-play on their phones. It was somebody would come with a letter and they'd be like, oh, this and this happened, and once every few weeks. Right? It wasn't a play-by-play. So more than anything else, it's important, and this is maybe what I'd like to leave with, and we can pick up from that next week, is know where you're heading, know what your personal goals are, okay? And we'll talk about that next week, inshallah. Know what your personal goals are, and be relentless in pursuing it, and shut out everything else. There's so many things that we actually do not need to know. And I know it's tough to say that because we want to know what's happening in Gaza, or we want to share, we want to do all this stuff. But really, I mean, if you want to attend protests, for example, that's good leverage that you have. But sitting on your phone and consuming a lot of information won't do anything. We already know that what's happening there is horrible and beyond what we can comprehend. So what's the point in you knowing it all if it's going to take away from you being able to perform here as a Muslim who has freedom of choice and more freedom than people over there? So it's important that we focus on ourselves. And I know it's tough to say that, but this is often I will remind my clients and myself is that if you are doing better, you can show up to your families better and serve them better. You can show up to your communities better and to the ummah and do better as well. But you have to be doing better yourself. So that's another component, is being relentless in pursuing your goals, but know what your goals are in general. And next week, inshallah, this Tuesday, we'll talk about the goals component. We have time for one more question. Actually, I don't know if the sisters have any questions, or if they have any questions, they're more welcome to say them, because I don't know if they had a chance. But. Okay, so we'll take your question and be the last question, inshallah.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
I wanted to, touch upon just the to check, for example, certain sometimes when we have difficulty with time management,
Right.
planning, coordinating our day to fit in all our, to do things that we have to do throughout the entire day, and sometimes we get trapped in, sidetracked by some, and like the brother was saying, like some distractions, everyday distractions, like online, or some other distractions that we don't, like maybe some habits that we might have formed early on in life. So how do we, balance that in terms of getting over those difficult times and staying on our time management?
That's a really good question. So here's a question, and this is a general question for everybody. Do you know in general where your money goes?
Where do we invest our money?
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. So money and time they're both resources, right? Is that money you work towards making more of, and time is something that's constant for all of us. But time is a resource that you invest. So it's important that you're aware of where you're putting your time in, which is why a time audit is really important. Spend time every evening writing down how much time you put towards what. On your social media platforms online, go on the usage page and see how much time you're putting in these. It'd be shocking sometimes how much, right? And yeah, I put like 6 hours in work, but be honest, like how much, if you put 6 hours, do you actually put all 6 hours in work, or were they like every half an hour you spent it on something else? What time, how much time did you spend in the morning, right? Like how much time did you spend sleeping? And then you'll start to see where your time is leaking and going into, okay? So time audit is the best way to do it, but being aware, and that feeds into awareness as well. Being aware of where you're putting your time is the key to time management, because then you can start to manage better when you know where that resource is going. Then you can be like, okay, well, I have this goal and this goal and this goal, and they need this X amount of time per day, per week. So then you start to budget them and make time for them. But you first have to start. We can't build a house with a rotten foundation. We start first by looking at where we put our time into, knowing that time is the most valuable thing we will ever have, because we don't know how much we have of it, inshallah. Okay, you're welcome. All right, so inshallah we will continue next Tuesday. I will talk about how to set goals and whatnot. And I will ask you about the 2 verses, if you guys saw anything in them, inshallah. And thank you. Yeah. Oh, one sister has a question. Great.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
The question is, if somebody has a spiritual problem and they have neighbors oppressing them, authorities don't do anything about it, and now, you're trying to keep up with your iman, and then there's nobody to talk to, you don't have family to talk to or resort to, people are turning their back on you, there's no counselors, and then, the only thing you want to lash out your frustration is playing games, and you think you have an excuse, and then you kind of go back and you think, well, you know what, I'm playing in the middle of the morning, and then after I should be doing Qiyam al-Layl or Tahajjud, but you can't sleep because you're suffering. How do you deal with this? Like, who do you go to? What can you do?
That's a great question.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I found a sheikh, but he's not consistent with treatments, and so this consistent behavior of others not being there for you, or me actually, I can't maintain my life properly. I can't clean, I can't do anything else, because the misery of it all is just, especially the neighbors, they're doing things, and I confirm with an investigator that hacking into our devices is possible, and they wanted money for this, and to investigate who's hacking in my device, because my neighbors are getting word from the hackers what I'm doing and what I'm talking about on my phone, and then they come out in the hallway and they do things in front of my door, all these things, I don't know who to talk to about this. Yeah.
So, first of all, thank you for being brave to share. It's a question that is, I'm sure multi-layered and it's a bit complex, but I will do my best to answer it, to point you in the right direction. So, in general, sometimes as Muslims, I know we think when this is happening, it's like, no, there's like hasad, there's sihr or whatever, so we go to shaykh and whatnot. But often, and there could be, I'm not saying that there is or there isn't, but it is really important that we focus always on what is within our control. And it seems like there's elements that you were talking about. And by the way, I'm answering because I don't know if this is you or it's somebody else. So I'm answering in general when I'm saying like you. There are elements that are within your control that potentially there's maybe like a lack of knowledge